Before we begin, thank you very much to XX Rocket Shark 216XX. I have not heard a name like that since the AOL days, but regardless, thank you very much for your contribution to patreon.com/TJOmega. Every little bit helps keep the channel going, and it has helped so much, especially during this this big push of videos that I've having. Seeing this support has been amazing, and it's been just energizing. So thank you guys very much for that. This is going to be an interesting Here's 10 because I'm going to be talking about mystery and the mysteries of Transformers. Now, there are many of them. We can't go through them all, and some of these you will have known about already. One or two of them may even have solutions, but nevertheless, these are things that have had the fandom wondering, buzzing, talking, questioning for a long time for one reason or another. So, let's get into it. These are 10 unsolved mysteries of Transformers, and we are starting with one of the longest running mysteries that may actually have an answer. So, when did we start using the term seeker? This is something that we've just kind of had ingrained in us for as long as we've known. Yeah, of course, the Starscream and all of those jets, those are seekers. Well, how did we get that name? That has been around since the newsgroup days, back when there weren't even internet forums. It was somehow, we just knew. Somehow, even in its infancy, the fandom just knew that seekers were the jets. So how did we actually get that? Because that was never in the cartoon, that was never in the comic book, that was never in any official media to actually tell us what Starscream's little group was called. Well, there is a source. Someone actually did suss out a source. And it appeared in Sears catalogs back in the G1 days, where some of the ads actually referred to Starscream and the Jets as seekers. But really, a few retailer catalogs, that's where we got the term from. Those were well known and popular enough that it actually spread amongst the community. How did that happen? Is that really how we picked up the term, or did we manage to pick it up from some kind of Hasbro source that was in communication with the fandom in the early days? We have no idea. It's just a accepted thing. They are the seekers. And obviously, because it appeared in those catalogs, that is somewhere in the official lexicon that Hasbro had back then. We were just not privy to it. How it actually happened, if it really was just those catalogs, we have no idea. But we know the term now. We know it was official at some point. Just have no idea how we got it. Next, we're going to look at a glaring omission from the Generation 2 era. And Generation 2 tried to throw in as much as it could, so it's hard to think they left anything out. However, when you look at the earliest figures of G2, you notice we have a set of Dinobots, because of course, they're Dinobots. They're some of the most popular Transformers ever produced. You have Grimlock, you had Slag, back when we could call him Slag, and you had Snarl. Where was Swoop and Sludge? I mean, keep in mind, this was the early 90s. This was prime time for kids and dinosaurs. How do you leave dinosaurs on the table? How do you get by with just 3 of the 5 Dinobots? How do you not release the other 2? No one's quite sure why Hasbro did not release the other 2. There is design concept art for what their redecos would have been like in Generation 2. Those do exist. They're out there. So does an alternate color scheme for Grimlock in a much more outlandish color scheme that actually had a lot of paint apps rather than just, switching his silver for blue. So at some point, they were planned for release, but why they didn't get released right after the first wave of Dinobots, we don't know. We know G2 got canceled when they still had a lot planned, but it seems like these didn't even make it past the concept stage. There's no prototypes that are known to exist, no packaging examples. It's literally just their G1 art recolored. And that's all we have. Just what Swoop and Sludge would have been like in Generation 2. Really confusing, especially knowing Hasbro. Imagine if Hasbro released 4 of the Constructicons and left out Hook and Scrapper. Not sure, but still confusing. This one has a little bit of personal beef with me, because we are going to be talking about Beast Machine's Silverbolt, and I'm going to ask you, what is he? Okay, fine. In the show, he's a condor. In the toy line, they call him a condor. But you can tell by the fact that that toy is not even packaged in Beast mode. When he's the only toy in Beast Machines that wasn't packaged in Beast mode. So, is that really what his Beast mode was supposed to be? Because he's got these legs, he's got this robot mode legs that have nowhere to go. They just dangle out to the sides, and they don't attach to his wings in any way, shape, or form. He's got an awkwardly placed head. You can't have him in like a flight pose or anything. He's a super awkward toy. And we're not even getting by. Like, how did he end up in that color scheme when he was apparently always supposed to homage a Dark Knight style character? What was he? The speculation was, and I mentioned this in my Plastic Addict review, that he was possibly meant to be a griffin, which would have been more in line with his Fusor's form from Beast Wars. But obviously we don't know that for sure. That is just fandom speculation, because if you put him on all fours, he actually does seem to function better as a toy and look a little bit better. A little bit better is all that toy can look. But nevertheless, it feels like it was never really meant to be a condor. At least the toy wasn't. And no one's really exactly sure what he was originally intended to be. But it is kind of clear he wasn't going to be a bird. For something a little bit more recent, let's look at a mystery from the movies, the live-action movies, that is to say, and the toy lines where we were supposed to get our first movie combiner and never really happened. And no, it wasn't the Constructicons. It was the RC triplets. Those 3 figures had what my friend Vangelis described as a slot flap. Each one of them had a piece that could come out the back and was supposed to act as some kind of connection system for all 3 of them. Originally, the plan was that the first 2 would come out, and then when Elita 1 was released, you'd be able to combine all of them together into this weird, like, tri-legged amalgamation thing and make, like, one solid figure out of it. But instructions for it were never released, and what was presumed to be a 3rd bike mold ended up just being a remold. So Elita 1 never actually had unique engineering that made any combination happen. This was actually kind of thrown into the Studio Series release of the RC triplets as well. They actually do have a little bit of engineering that would allow them to combine. They have dedicated parts that come with them, where they don't help in anything. They are meant to be for this combined form. No instructions were given, and this was frustrating back in Revenge of the Fallen, because online Hasbro kept saying, we're going to give you instructions. When all 3 of the sisters are released, we will release the instructions on how to combine them all. Never happened. So we're never quite sure how they were supposed to be combined, or if the toys were ever really designed to be combined, or if this was just, we put this superfluous piece in hoping we'd use it someday, and we never got around to it. Either way, no one ever figured out how to get the triplets to properly combine, and to this day, we're probably never going to find out. Next up, an unfortunate circumstance that left us pining for a very rare Beast Wars toy. We are talking about Metal's Ravage, the infamous X9 Ravage, and until the brand new one from the Kingdom remold of Cheetor, the only figure we had to represent Beast Wars Ravage. Admittedly, not a great representation of him, but an extremely cool and characterful toy that never came out in the US. This was only released in Japan. The only time the US ever got a whiff of this toy was during BotCon, when it was repainted and recast as Transmetal Tigatron. This would be the only way anyone in America could get it until, getting things online became a lot easier, and getting things imported from Japan became more possible. But we don't know what happened to it after that. So BotCon used the mold in order to create Tigatron, and then somewhere in the shipping process, the mold vanished. No one knows where it is now. And you'd think a massive steel mold would be really hard to lose track of, but lose track of it we did. The mold just is gone. So this is such an extremely popular figure that would have been ripe for Hasbro to reuse and release in America at any given point. We're never going to see it again. Ever. Unless they remake it and reverse engineer it from the existing toy. To this day, it hasn't turned up, and there's been no sign of any way of being able to reuse it. So BotCon Tigatron and X9 Ravage remain these weird little points in Transformers history where we're never going to see those toys again, no matter how popular they were. And it's really unfortunate because, good Lord, the price on X9 Ravage. Now we get to one of my favorites, a mystery from Armada that even Hasbro was clueless about. Back then, they bulked out the Armada toy line by remolding 5 Transmetals from Beast Wars, one as a Voyager, or was it MaxCon at the time, and then 4 Deluxes. And those, they were remolded to have Minicon ports, and they got Minicon partners. However, there was one oddball out of the group. AirRaiser, for whatever reason, could be found with a Decepticon symbol molded in. Now, you could see it during transformation. It's on her back, but it doesn't really appear in either beast mode or robot mode. You kind of have to dig to see it. But it is there, and no one is sure why. People asked Aaron Archer, who was in charge of Transformers at the time, why does AirRaiser have a Decepticon symbol molded in? And they said, we don't know. That wasn't in any of our design plans. So we're not sure exactly how it ended. How does a retooling like that just end up on a figure and nobody knows how it happened? No one. Archer tried to patch it up by saying, well, she was probably a double agent. So they gave a little bit of fiction. They quickly slapdashed some fiction to explain why, but didn't explain what side was she spying for or anything like that. It was just a really, really weird situation. Why? Was she originally planned to be a Decepticon? Apparently not. Wasn't in any of their plans. And yeah, how do you get changes to a tooling like that and no one knows how? It's interesting because it's one of those really weird details and really weird things because there was a conscious decision to do it. It's just the fact that nobody knows who made the decision. Now we move on to a mystery that isn't supposed to be solved. In Transformers Animated, we had Starscream's clones that were all made up from different aspects of his personality. It was Animated's way of creating the full cast of Seekers without really explaining why we had so many duplicate robots all over the place. Here, they're just clones. Okay, I will go with that. Now, all of them represented something different about Starscream, his cowardice, his arrogance. And then there was Slipstream. There was the one female Decepticon out of the whole batch of clones, and no one in the show could really figure out what her deal was. She didn't seem to be any one aspect of Starscream's character. She seemed to be completely her own entity. And color-wise, we couldn't really place her with any existing character. She was supposed to be an homage to I believe one of the Breastmasters for Overlord. The purple and blue was supposed to come from there. She ended up looking like G2 Ramjet, which they later stated was an accident. However, the character herself, no one could figure out what it was. Poor Derek J. Wyatt, who had to field this on Twitter probably every day for years. What was female Starscream supposed to be? Does it mean Starscream is secretly gay? Does he actually transgendered? Is this supposed to be his sarcasm? Is this supposed to be his cunning? What is this character supposed to be? At some point, Derek just started answering yes to everyone who had their own theory, no matter what. So the reality of it is, she's not supposed to be known. It was thrown in just to get people talking and guessing and asking, what is she? What is she? What is she supposed to represent in Starscream? This is a mystery because it was designed to be a mystery. And there is no answer to this particular mystery. But you will still find people trying to figure out what part of Starscream's brain made a female clone come out. Keep wondering, because you're never going to get the answer to that one. Next up, one of the most popular groups of Decepticons, and trying to figure out where they came from. Where did the Constructicons come from? Please, someone has to fill me in on this. In the original cartoon, they just showed up one day on Earth. They were just said that Megatron just had them created. This was before things like personality cores that made the Combaticons became a thing. This was before Vector Sigma having to bring Transformers to life became a thing in fiction. This was literally Megatron just going, I built these guys. Yay me. But later on we find out they existed on Cybertron. They were not Decepticons. They were friendly with Omega Supreme. They built the Crystal City. And then Megatron forcibly reprogrammed them into the Constructicons. So there's origin number 2. And but we also have the fact that they're in 5 Faces of Darkness building Megatron in the first place, so they also existed millions of years ago? This gives me such a headache. Oh my god, this gives me such a headache. So, we're not exactly sure. There's 3 different origins to the Constructicons. There's a 4th one if you go by the Marvel Comics. Shockwave brought them to life there with the Creation Matrix. So there's 4. There's just 4. Now, 5 Faces of Darkness, infamously poorly animated. I could chalk that one up to an error. I don't know how to explain the two existing origins from the first seasons. I don't know. No one knows. It's just an extremely confusing bit of writing that has left this incredibly wide gray area of, these are some of the most popular Decepticons. This is the original combiner group. We have no origin story for them. No one's got a clue. Now let's talk about a mold that just snuck its way into the original toy line, and no one seemed to notice until years later. So, back in the day, you had Cliffjumper and Bumblebee released pretty normally. Every now and then there'd be weird factory mix-ups, and you'd get a red Bumblebee, or you'd get a yellow Cliffjumper. You might get them on opposite cars. There was a lot of really weird errors when it came to those two because they were so similar. But the most confusing of errors happened when a completely different yellow figure started showing up on Cliffjumper cards. Now, because it was a little yellow mini-bot that transformed like Cliffjumper and Bumblebee and it was yellow and it came on a red Cliffjumper card, it adopted the name Bumblejumper. That it was this weird amalgamation character between the two, that it wasn't either of those figures. It was just an alternate version of their mold, and no one's quite sure how it got its way into the line. Later on, we would re-identify the character as Bumper. And the weird thing about Bumper is that he had unique color, he had unique molding to him, he had unique paint apps to him. He was completely produced, but never got released on his own card or had any kind of real name attached to him. He was only released as an alternate to Cliffjumper for some reason, and no one's really sure why. It's still confusing to this day how that happened. There's a presumption that it could have ended up on Bumblebee cards as well, since it could have just been a factory error. They ran the wrong mold or something. There's never been a packaged example to prove that. Only Cliffjumper. So no one knows. And this is dating back to the early days of G1, back when Cliffjumper and Bumblebee were both in production. No, that's a long time to go without any kind of answer, especially when it's like, how did you even get a hold of the mold? How did you even use a mold that wasn't even like in production, wasn't on a show, nothing? You just, I don't know. And that's the fun part. Nobody knows. It's just Bumper. And finally, the most infamous mystery that Transformer fans still debate to this day. Who is Cyclonus? So in the movie, we got to see Megatron, reformatted into Galvatron. Everyone knows that one. That one's easy. So we also got to see characters redone into the Sweeps, and Scourge is very central, so we know exactly who Scourge was. However, we also have this little thing where Cyclonus and his armada were introduced at the same time, two identical characters sharing the screen, and one of them vanished immediately. So, Cyclonus himself could have been one of two characters, Skywarp or Bombshell. And we never really got either, and thanks to animation errors, Bombshell kept showing up, so that threw even more confusion into it. I think in the movie, even Skywarp was shown in a crowd shot or during the Unicron battle, I believe. It's extremely confusing. To this day, no one really knows which it was supposed to be. And here's the thing. Hasbro knows of that confusion. And for once, they don't try to clarify it. They don't try to clear it up. They just go, okay, could have been either one. Like, literally, that's how they advertise Cyclonus toys. Like, he was Skywarp or Bombshell. One or the other. This one, I think, is just going to be like that one's. This is going to be the mystery that's just going to last forever. No one's going to be happy with any answer you give to this one, and I don't have an answer for it either. I would like to say it's Bombshell because he was the one at the forefront of the shot, but you don't know. Nobody knows. Even the people who wrote the movie don't know, because like they're all going off of like scripts where like there were supposed to be just as many Cyclonuses as Sweeps, and that didn't happen. Like the concept of multiple Cyclonuses didn't survive more than one shot. So that is it. Those are my mysteries for the day. There's a lot of confusion to these. There's a lot of missing information. Some of it is a lot of fan speculation. Some of it is Hasbro basically going, we don't know either. But I think it's interesting that for as much as we have learned about Transformers, and for as much information as we have, for as many resources as we have, collecting info and making sure that the info survives, I think it's amazing that there's so many things we still do not know. And even if we go directly to the source, we still can't find out. There's mysteries to this fandom, mysteries to Transformers, and I think that is fascinating. So I would love to collect more and talk about more sometime. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button if you like this, and please subscribe and find out if we're going to do it again someday. But until then, thank you for joining me for another video, and I hope I'm going to see you in the next one. Guys, I am facing the most powerful enemy any YouTuber can face, the algorithm, and I need your help to defeat him. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Every time you do, we attack that algorithm and we drive it back until it can no longer defeat this channel. Thank you very much.